The forest stood still at 9:17 in the morning. The temperature fluctuated between minus 30 degrees Celsius and minus 40 degrees Celsius, depending on the wind. No birds, no snapping branches, only compressed snow under heavy boots. Across the white line, Soviet columns advanced in formation. Records indicate over 100,000 soldiers, supported by light tanks, mortars, and heavy artillery. The mission was simple: cross eastern Finland in a matter of days. Soviet maps treated it as an administrative detail. On the Finnish side, the number barely reached 30,000 men, spread across small detachments. No equivalent tanks, no air superiority. Ammunition was scarce, counted. Soviet doctrine predicted overwhelming by sheer volume. Infantry advancing en masse. Artillery clearing the front. Any resistance would be dissolved by weight. But something began to break that calculation. At 9:21, the first officer fell. A single shot. No echo. No muzzle flash. The men looked around. Nothing. At 9:24, another soldier dropped approximately 240 meters from the forest edge. Same pattern. One shot. One fall. Silence. No enemy position identified. No suppressive fire. No visible movement. In less than 20 minutes, the advance halted. Soviet reports describe the effect as sudden disorganization. In practice, no one wanted to be the next to cross the open space. The forest did not fire in bursts. It fired at irregular intervals, as if it were choosing. Commanders ordered the men to spread out. It didn't work. They ordered a rapid advance. Casualties increased. The problem was not the number of dead. It was the impossibility of reacting. There was no target. In Soviet eyes, this made no sense. It wasn't machine gun nest. It wasn't a classic defensive position. It was precision. Someone had been there for hours, perhaps days, and they were not retreating. At 11:02, the Soviets changed their procedure. If they couldn't see the shooter, they would force him to move. Grenades were randomly hurled into the forest edge. Then mortars. Then light artillery. Trees splintered. Snow exploded in white clouds. Visibility dropped to zero. When the bombardment ceased, the men advanced again. The first soldier fell after 12 steps. The shot came from the same sector. Same cadence. Same absence of a trace. According to records, the local commander requested elite snipers. The response was swift. Men specifically trained to hunt other marksmen. They arrived that same morning. Their method was standard. Observe, wait for the shot, identify the glint of the scope. But there was no glint, because there was no scope. The Finnish shooter used only iron sights. According to later accounts, he avoided any surface that could reflect light. Even visible breath was a risk. He solved this by holding snow inside his mouth for long periods, so that vapor would not betray his position. At 13:40, the first Soviet counter-sniper was hit. At 13:47, the second. At 14:10, the third. The shots always came after long intervals. Never two in a row from the same spot. Never predictable. The forest did not respond to chaos. It controlled it. By late afternoon, the Soviets were no longer trying to advance. They were trying to understand. A single man had stopped an entire element of the line, not by force, but by decision. He chose when to shoot. He chose when to wait. And, most importantly, he chose when not to shoot. It was at this point that the reports began to change tone. The word resistance was replaced by another persistent threat. They still didn't know his name, but they had already understood something essential. This was not luck. It was method. At 6:48 the next morning, the forest felt different. There were no advancing columns, no shouted orders, only organized silence. The Soviets had changed their method. Instead of pushing infantry into open ground, they began to slowly encircle the area where the shots had come from the day before. This was an assault. It was a funnel. Patrols of 6 to 8 men moved in semicircles, keeping 30 to 40 meters between each group. The goal wasn't to win a firefight. It was to force a mistake. The Finnish sniper realized this before firing a single shot that day. He didn't fire at 7 o'clock, not at 8 o'clock, not at 9 o'clock. He stayed still. According to later Finnish records, he remained in the same position for more than 11 hours, partially buried in the snow, using a compacted snow mound in front of the rifle as his only support. No broken branches, no fresh marks. Meanwhile, the Soviets introduced dogs, not to attack, to track scent. When the first dog moved along the side trail, the sniper waited until the handler was at approximately 150 meters. One shot. The handler fell. The dog stopped, confused. That confirmed his approximate position. At 12:23, heavy artillery was brought in again, this time with adjustment. The impacts walked closer in a logical sequence. One explosion threw snow and fragments less than 10 meters from his position. Another landed even closer. He did not retreat. He simply pressed his body a few centimeters deeper into the snow, packing it tighter with bare hands to absorb the shock wave. At 13:05, a fragment struck his face. It didn't kill him, but it drew blood. He wiped it away with his white sleeve and waited. The Soviet mistake came at 13:42. An officer stepped slightly up onto a rise to observe the terrain after the bombardment. He was exposed for less than 4 seconds. That was enough. The shot ended the attempt at a direct encirclement, but the message was clear. They knew roughly where he was, and he knew he couldn't stay there forever. At 16:10, the Soviets made their second adaptation. If they couldn't drive him out with indirect fire, they would try something simpler: volume. Machine guns began sweeping the forest, not aiming at targets, but at likely areas. The goal was to force movement. Any movement. The sniper began to withdraw for the first time in 2 days. Not running, crawling. He advanced less than 1 meter per minute, pushing snow forward with his forearm, always leaving the ground looking untouched. Any trail would be a death sentence. At 17:02, a Soviet soldier nearly stepped on him. The distance between the boot and the rifle was less than 1 meter. The soldier stopped, looked around, spat into the snow. If he had looked down for 1 more second, he would have seen the barrel. He didn't. When the soldier moved away, the sniper didn't react, didn't take a deep breath, didn't move. He waited another 18 minutes before continuing to crawl. Shortly after, an artillery shell exploded behind him, throwing him forward. His head struck the frozen ground. His vision went dark for several seconds. This was the first real near-death moment. According to his own later account, this was when he understood he could no longer win by staying invisible alone. The enemy was learning. He needed to change the game. By nightfall, the sector was shattered, broken trees, snow mixed with earth. But the sniper hadn't left. He had simply chosen a different place. The hunt wasn't over. It had evolved. By 7:12 on the third day, the forest had lost its shape. Snowbanks were broken. Trees were snapped at mid-height. Shell craters interrupted every natural line of sight. This worked against mass movement. It favored someone alone. The sniper stopped thinking like a fixed position. He began thinking like a moving trap. Instead of waiting for targets to cross open ground, he shifted to short relocations, 20 to 30 meters at a time, always after long pauses. Never immediately after a shot. Never twice in the same direction. He built false positions, small snow mounds, carefully packed. Rifle impressions pressed into them, then abandoned. At 8:04, a Soviet counter-sniper fired at one of these decoys. The shot revealed his position. The response came 9 seconds later. One shot, one fall. The Soviets adjusted again. They stopped exposing individuals. They began advancing in pairs, leapfrogging cover, each man watching the other's blind side. At 9:31, the sniper let the first pair pass, did not fire. At 9:44, He took the second pair, one shot, one man down. The second froze. Looked left, looked right. The second shot came 14 seconds later. This pattern repeated throughout the morning. The key wasn't speed, it was patience. He was no longer reacting to movement. He was controlling it. By 11:20, Soviet reports noted that units were refusing to advance without artillery preparation, even for distances under 100 meters. This slowed everything. That delay was the opening. At 12:02, a group of officers gathered near a shallow ridge to coordinate the next push. Maps out, heads together. They believed the sniper was farther east. He wasn't. The shot dropped the central figure. The group scattered. In the confusion, two more fell trying to run. The duel was no longer theoretical. It was personal. They were hunting him. But now they knew he was hunting them back. By mid-afternoon, the Soviets committed to a final method, encirclement at close range. Instead of spreading out, they tightened the ring. Distances closed to 15 to 20 meters between men. Any movement would be seen. Any shot would be answered instantly. The sniper understood the risk. He didn't retreat. He went lower. He carved a shallow depression beneath a fallen log and packed snow over his body until only the rifle and one eye remained exposed. From above, it looked like drift. At 15:18, footsteps approached from the left. Slow, deliberate. At 15:21, another from the right. They were flushing him. At 15:24, a soldier stopped directly in front of the log. Distance, under 10 meters. The sniper did not aim center mass. He aimed upward. The shot dropped the man backward, blocking the line of sight for those behind him. Before the echo faded, the sniper rolled sideways into a shell crater and stayed still. Bullets tore through the log. Then grenades. One exploded close enough to fill his mouth with snow and debris. He did not move. He counted seconds. At 15:31, firing slowed. At 15:34, it stopped. They believed they had killed him. At 15:41, he fired again, this time from behind him. Two men fell within 6 seconds. Panic followed. The ring broke. That was the moment the duel ended. Not because the fighting stopped, but because the balance was decided. From that point on, Soviet units treated the sector as cursed ground. Movement slowed to a crawl. Orders were delayed. Fear replaced momentum. The sniper didn't need to dominate the battlefield. He had already broken it. By 8:40 a.m. few days later, the front had shifted only on paper. On the ground, nothing moved without hesitation. The Soviets no longer advanced in formation. They probed, stopped, waited. The sniper was still operating in the same sector. At 9:17, a new counter-sniper team arrived. This time, they carried explosive rounds, designed to detonate on impact, not penetrate cleanly. The logic was simple. Even a near miss would be enough. The sniper detected them by sound, not sight. Snow compressing differently. Metal brushing fabric. Breathing patterns that didn't match infantry. At 9:41, he fired first. The shot missed by inches. The response was immediate. An explosive round struck his position. The blast shattered the snowbank in front of his face. Fragments entered his jaw. His head snapped back. The world went white. This was the second real near-death moment. According to later medical records, his lower face was destroyed. Teeth gone. Jaw fractured. Blood filled his airway. He lost consciousness. The Soviets assumed the kill. They reported the position neutralized, but they were wrong. The sniper regained consciousness hours later, after dark, unable to speak, unable to aim. He crawled, not meters, not tens of meters, hundreds. Finnish patrols found him just before midnight, still gripping his rifle. He was evacuated immediately. His war was over. The official Finnish records list over 500 confirmed kills, all without a telescopic sight, achieved in less than 100 days of combat. These numbers come from unit-level confirmations, not personal claims. Every engagement was logged, every position verified. The Soviets never officially acknowledged the scale, but their behavior did. Entire sectors were avoided. Artillery was wasted on empty forests. Battalions slowed by a single absence. After the war, the sniper survived. His face was reconstructed. His jaw healed imperfectly. When asked how he did it, his answer was simple. I did what I was told to do, and I stayed calm. He never described hatred, never described fear. Only method, only patience, only discipline. The farmer returned to the land. The war moved on, but the lesson stayed. An army can have numbers. An army can have machines. But when one man controls time, distance, and decision, the entire battlefield bends around him. Sources and dating of unfinished Army wartime records. Winter War Unit reports. Kala Sector, 1939, 1940 post-war medical records, and interviews with Simo Häyhä Finnish Defense Forces archives.